Hi, this is Jonas. Welcome to another mini episode of the Bonsai Wire podcast.
I'm Andrew Robson.
And I have a question for Andrew today. I was wondering, I have a domestic juniper. Should I graft it or should I keep it with its own native foliage?
Oh man, you're asking a deciduous person a juniper question.
Which should make it fair game.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you like more?
Well, that's a really good question. I love natives and I love the variety we get with native foliage, but I find that I often feel that I'm compromising my design goal for the tree when I rely on native foliage. I want that beautiful blue Sierra juniper color in the garden, but I love the compact, tight foliage of the exotic junipers. And so I'm always torn about which cases I want to leave native and which cases I want to just try as hard as I can and get it as good as I can, knowing that it's just not going to be I'll be expressing something different is kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 2 collected junipers in my collection. Even though I'm a deciduous guy, I keep a couple conifer benches just to keep things green in the winter and spicy. And I've decided this year I'm going to graft both of my Rocky Mountain junipers. Yeah.
What are you going to graft them with?
I'm going to graft them with Shimpaku, with Itoigawa. And I'm going to use a couple different types of Itoigawa.
Oh, cool.
To like I said, keep things spicy.
Slightly different color, slightly different cluster pattern, kind of.
Yeah, one's a larger tree, and I have like a more larger, coarser foliage, which I think works well for that. One is much smaller, and I'll use a much tighter foliage.
Oh, that'll be great.
But I've decided I don't like wiring every single tuft of Rocky Mountain foliage every single year. And it would be like I have a juniper Shimpaku in the garden. It's just like the easiest plant to take care of. And being someone who's not, I'm a deciduous guy. I like deciduous work, and having to wire every single branch on a conifer every single time. It would be nice if things held their shape a little bit, and they don't tend to do that when you have native rocky foliage.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so much variety or variation among different Shimpaku foliar types. The ones that we use for bonsai are the best of the best of the best that have been used for like 100 years.
Yeah.
And we've given good lip service to finding those best Rocky Mountain juniper foliage types, those best Sierra or California juniper foliage types. And I think we've actually identified some really good ones, but I don't know if we have the slam dunk guaranteed this is what's going to give us the branch pads we're looking for.
Yeah, we're still young in that adventure, I think.
Yeah.
But,
it's getting a lot better, and I think we'll see more. It's funny, I've got a couple Sierras that seem to just make really nice, tight clumping patterns on their own. And so in my perspective, my concept of branching on juniper requires a number of years to get there. And so it's just so brutal to think, okay, after I've got the primaries in place, it's a good 5-year process to put down the rudiments of a pad for the kind of art that I'm trying to make with these things. And who wants to cut off 5-10 years of growth?
Yeah. Yeah, on one of my junipers, it's like I've styled it several times. It's like I'm hitting a total reset button when I go to graft it. But I just know the trajectory of this tree moving forward. I'm just going to be much happier with the care that it receives. And it's not that I'm lazy. It's just I want the tree to work with me. And I feel like with a Rocky, I'm constantly working against it.
Push the boulder downhill.
Right.
Still a boulder to press, but
it's still a boulder, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. I will admit I've been kind of pokey when it comes to doing my grafting because I've been very honestly fascinated by watching everyone's experiments in grafting. I have a couple domestic junipers in the backyard that I'm very open to grafting, but for like 5, 6, 7 years now, I've postponed grafting, and I'm literally just waiting on this jury decision.
It's a hot topic right now. I think most people feel strongly either way.
I do. And I'm also finding some of my friends are coming to some new conclusions after a lot of years. And so a friend who has a whole bunch of collected trees, has decided it's a wonderful approach. And I think we've talked about this before, to have as many different colors as possible in the garden. And so find a blue shimpaku, find a blue kishu and a green kishu, find one of these, find one of those. And there's your spicy. And I kind of love that answer.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I always wonder with the native foliage, especially with junipers, are we only keeping this foliage because it's native, just because it has that philosophical
That's
thought,
right.
or do we actually really like that foliage and what it's able to provide us in terms of design?
Oh, and I think that's the right question because it's fuzzy. And I think there's two things going on. Part of it is that we like the color. I love the color of Sierra junipers. It's a great contrast
that blue
to the
is
garden.
so nice.
And there's a lot of variety. Some Sierras are really green, but I love the color. I don't love the character.
Yeah.
But then there's this other fuzzy continuum. It's the purity thing. I want to feel like it's representing where it's from. If bonsai is an art or craft of place, in that I'm already frustrated. Like there's so much irony built into bonsai. If a bonsai represents a place in which it grew and it can only tell that story once we take it out of that place, it's no longer telling that story. Actually, that's kind of getting us into what I want to talk about with collecting too. But I love that the foliage helps evoke that story of kind of where the tree is from.
Yeah.
And
it's nice to be able to celebrate that. This is a domestic. This is a Rocky Mountain. This comes from. We can use that to educate people to say this is something in the mountains that's worth protecting and fighting for.
And it makes it personal for people,
right?
And so part of it is we like the foliage character. Part of it is we want to keep the tree pure, as in unadulterated. Even that one's fuzzy because partly people just don't want to graft if they don't have to. I don't want to if I don't have to.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing to do, a whole other skill set. Sets the tree back a few years.
Right, and then there's a question of whether or not we like it. So there's at least three different ways of looking at whether or not we make the decision from that.
It's always an interesting question to me. I live in Portland, Oregon. A Rocky Mountain juniper comes from about maybe 500 to 1,000 miles away from where I live. So is it really a native plant if it's coming from a day's drive away?
My favorite topic. Where I live, I can grow California live oaks. Otherwise, I don't grow bonsai because that's my native. Yeah. So if I focus on natives, I grow oak trees.
Yeah, oak trees and redwoods.
Or maybe weeds. It's true. Oak trees probably grow walkable to my house, but it might be a very long day or more than a day's walk for me to get to. No, a very long day's walk, I can get to redwoods from my place. But no redwoods grew in my town where I live. None.
Yeah. The native argument assumes that, if I live in Arizona, that working with a plant in Michigan is the same thing. And in a continent as big as North America, that's...
Oh, thanks for that example, because no one ever gives me a hard time for not loving natives because I don't have saguaro cactus in my garden.
Yeah.
It's funny how native gets far more convenient. Like, natives can't include larches because everyone knows larches won't grow where I live and hemlocks won't grow where I live. Right. So, of course, that's not what we mean by natives.
And there's like a physical location native, and I think there's also, you could argue there's culturally native plants.
Yeah.
My first experience with a plant is Japanese maples, a tree that grows a whole ocean away from where I lived. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and my earliest memory of a plant is being in a garden center running through a whole batch of Japanese maples.
And at the family nursery I grew up in, what was the giant shade tree over the pond and the waterfall where I spent all my time? Japanese maple.
Yep.
Funny you mention that.
If you came to Portland, Oregon, and you drove around the neighborhoods, you would almost think Japanese maple is a native plant.
That's a fair point.
You'd think that in a lot of the country. It's one of the most popular garden plants. It grows everywhere.
Yeah, it's the number one nursery tree in my town. That's easy.
Yeah.
And so, there is that kind of cultural, affinity for a tree. But while I understand definitionally what people mean by native, I've never thought of native as anything other that grows in my area because it just feels weird for me to think of that I should be growing a tree because some of them live 1,000 or 2,000 miles away from here, and they only barely live in my climate. In fact, when you think of all the trees that grow in the Sierra Nevada, all of these wonderful white pines that just will not grow in my climate because we lack the winter. If I can't keep a tree native to my state alive a mere 3 hours from my house, literally a 3-hour drive away, why in the world would I feel affinity to a tree that's native distribution starts 1,000 miles away?
Yeah.
It'd be like the other end of Europe and calling that a native.
Yeah, the way we use native is very interesting depending on the context.
It is, and I found the only way I can even describe it is it's the elevation of trees with whom I share a political boundary.
Yep.
And that's just, it sounds so much less interesting like that.
Yeah. And you and I are both people who love native plants too.
And so what gets you excited about natives? I know what gets me excited about natives is opportunities to investigate species that haven't really been worked with a lot. That's why natives are exciting to me.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's really fun to go through that process.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite natives?
It's funny, actually, when you said that. All of the local species that are wonderful plants with no good characteristics for bonsai whatsoever came to mind, like, bay laurel, coyote brush.
Yeah.
We've got them all over the hills around here. But I've been having a ton of fun with coast redwoods lately.
Yeah, coast redwoods are fun, and you have some nice ones in the backyard.
They keep you on your toes, man. They're fastest
busy.
growing tree in the garden. I thought deciduous were fast, and then I got some redwoods, and it's like, oh.
It's a different game. It's a different game entirely.
Yeah, what's it like with the small number of redwoods you have in your garden right now?
I have one, and it keeps me on my toes. It's the busiest tree in the garden by far. But I enjoy it. It's busy in the sense that it takes 2 minutes every 3 days, but
it's really rewarding to see how fast they come along.
Yeah.
And just knowing that they're tuned to our climate helps. But that said, redwoods are actually pretty darn specific to what they like, and I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what they like, because there's enough variation of where they grow along the coast. I mean, you figure on planet Earth, they grow in a pretty slim environment
super slim.
Along the coast, and most of them are just in from the coast, not right at the coast, and so they like a little more warmth. But you go up north and you do see more along the coast, and so even within the genetic variation of up and down the state, you see different characteristics.
It's funny. Your favorite native is the most busiest plant. My favorite native is perhaps the opposite.
Oh, which one's that?
It's
vine maple.
Vine maple.
Yeah,
I love vine maples.
That's cool.
If you spend any time in a lava flow and see these plants creeping through the rocks and whatnot, they're real special plants.
So when I think of vine maples, I think of a really sinuous form, and so when you just close your eyes and think vine maple, is there a characteristic shape that you expect a vine maple to take?
Yeah, they're very abstract. They're very in that world of Bunjin, of Oshare, or this really provocative elegance.
Oh, define Oshare.
Oshare is provocative elegance. It's this it's thin trunk that has drama. And
so even in healthy conditions, there's still going to be these scraggly, funky little things.
Yeah, the vine maples, the Native Americans called them octopus trees. And the interesting thing about vine maples is they actually move throughout the landscape, and so they're very horizontal in their growth pattern. And as these long, big branches weigh themselves down, they'll root. And so it's possible that vine maples can travel for miles over the span of a long time.
That's so crazy.
But it's crazy to think about them, one genetic moving throughout the forest through 100 or 1,000 years, something like that.
We have a similar plant just right here in the Oakland Hills, the East Bay Hills. I forget precisely what the name of the thing is right now. It has some of those characteristics, not as malleable as the vine maple, however.
Yeah. And for vine maples too, they have a lot of drama compared to most young deciduous trees, which grow ramrod straight.
So that makes it sound like you have a ton of flexibility for how you style them as bonsai. There's like no par approach or alternative approach. It's more like, what do you have, and then try to give that bonsai characteristics to enhance it.
Yeah, exactly. And when working with them, they're, the best ones have these really crazy lines that are really hard to imitate or recreate or whatnot. So you're mostly working with found objects. Working with a young vine maple, I find, is almost pointless. Working with one that you can collect that has these crazy lines and movements and things that you can never wire if you wired for 100 years. Those are the ones that I find really special.
It's funny. This might be the Vine Maple Redwood podcast, because as hearing you describe that, as I think of redwoods, they're my single favorite example of kind of genetic diversity. They're actually planted all over my hometown here in Alameda, and you can't walk anywhere without seeing several of them. No two will look the same. There are skinny ones, there are broad ones, there are healthy ones, there are more and more straggly, weak ones. You'll see two in the same backyard, completely different. Some of the branches go out and hang down, some point up, some are horizontal. And so when we think of the close your eye and imagine redwood, we typically, I imagine much bigger, older trees from the older growths. But when I think of in my hometown, it's all over the map, which gets us back to, and so relevant in a native discussion, what are the models we select for our bonsai?
Yeah.
Because am I doing horizontal branches? Am I doing descending? Am I just going to be, quote, conifer dude and make the branches go down? Or am I going to borrow from younger trees in the redwood life cycle that might have more horizontal branching?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. With deciduous, we mostly design mature trees. We don't design ancient trees because an ancient deciduous tree looks like crap.
Yeah.
It looks like, an oak tree that's half dead.
That's right. It's the collapse phase.
It's not pleasing. And that collapse phase on a deciduous, I think, happens faster than it does on a conifer.
It does. We have, when you think of the oak trees lining driveways in Savannah, Georgia, you think, you know what? Those are 300 years old, and that's all the character I need. Those are amazing.
Yep. Nice mature trees, nice beautiful silhouettes, crowns, whatnot.
That's right. Or when we see some of those gorgeous oaks in the UK that are truly ancient, those most outstanding, oldest specimens are truly amazing and impressive.
And speaking of oaks, that is a native plant that we need a lot more of. I mean, there's so few good oak bonsai. You have them here with a lot of the live oaks and whatnot in California, but deciduous oaks, I think we're lacking.
I'm really curious if we're going to find deciduous oaks with great characteristics for bonsai. So many good deciduous oaks are little bit big on the leaf size, a little bit big on the internode side, but I know they're out there.
They're out there, and I think we give leaf size too much credit in the conversation of
That's
bonsai.
why I had to add in internode size, because sometimes they go together. But so right in California, we have the blue oak and the valley oak, and they're both fantastic.
I have a valley oak. It's one of my favorite trees in the garden because
they have beautiful texture. Those leaves are amazing. The darn lobes on those leaves give you
quite small,
quite the unique texture on a deciduous tree in a fairly small package.
And the benefit of an oak bonsai is, so many of the classic deciduous trees that we work with have really smooth bark. Think your Japanese maples, your beech. Stewartia is smooth, but maybe it exfoliates, so it's got a little something. But when you have a really craggy bark deciduous plant, that gets exciting. And so native oaks are a good opportunity.
Okay, so if we're going to add oaks to our list of native trees to talk about today, oak styling is an interesting question, because imagine, I don't know if you've ever seen one, I haven't. Imagine how silly it would look if you saw a valley or blue oak with traditional Japanese maple branch patterns.
That would look
like
strange.
A volcano trunk with horizontal branches.
Yeah.
Japanese maples don't grow like that in nature, and yet it's perfectly natural to make bonsai-shaped Japanese maples.
It is.
And we often tell beginners, this is how Japanese maples should look.
Yeah, one of the first things I do in most of my first presentations to a club is talk about that kind of shift. We have, trees that look like bonsai and bonsai that look like trees, and they're both acceptable. They're both great, but they're two very different aesthetic paths that you can.
Can you imagine again? Live oaks, I've seen tons of them shaped like bonsai. That's totally natural, but I've not seen people take the time, at least not as frequently, with our smaller leaved deciduous oaks. That'd be fascinating.
Speaking about oaks, it's interesting because I think in almost most of North America, you're probably not far from an oak tree.
It's true, because our live oaks run throughout the Southeast.
Yeah, you have them in the Southeast, you have them in the Midwest, the Northeast.
Yeah.
You have them up near the Great Lakes. You have them in Arizona and New Mexico. You have a lot of oaks in California. There's
here,
oaks all over.
Yeah, and apart from those lonely stretches of Highway 80 where you can go almost across full states without seeing a single tree.
Yeah, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Wyoming.
A lot of Wyoming, yeah. Driving to the National, it's just such a great reminder of the geographic diversity we have in this country.
Yeah.
But again, that drives home back to our point about the natives in the first place. I could conceivably find a tree native to Wyoming that I could keep alive in my garden. And
is it native? Because it comes from 1,500 miles away.
And so that just tells me we get to pick our definitions, and we're either sharing a national boundary in which I'll say yes, or we're sharing a state boundary in which I'll say no, or we'll do the thing that is rarely spoken of. Are we sharing a climactic environment? No.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because Japan has a lot of native plants that they don't use for bonsai. And the other thing that we could talk about is that not every native plant might work perfectly for bonsai, even though it might be a fun story to share.
Yeah, so, we have California buckeye, and we have all these funny, huge leaved plants that people grow for bonsai. And honestly, they're super fun to see around, but they're never going to provide us with the density that we typically expect. So I'm glad some of my friends have some, beautiful buckeye bonsai, but it's not like it's going to get so dense you can't reach your fist in between the branches.
Yeah, so finding something native but conducive to the art of bonsai.
So I want to see more scrub oaks, because they're evergreen oaks that have these really neat prickly leaves, but fantastically small internodes, fantastically small leaves, and they tend to get trampled or die back. So theoretically, there should be a ton of fun stumps out in the foothills where it's usually too gnarly weather to want to collect, but they should be out there.
This is turning into the oak podcast, but I would love to see more scarlet oak. So scarlet oak is a deciduous oak from the southeast United States, and it's one of the oaks that gets tremendous fall color. The fall color on this oak, it's like a really vivid red. Whereas most oaks get kind of just brown and then yellow and fall off.
Then I'll stop short of talking about red maples because I love them for the same reason. Such unbelievable color.
Yeah.
But I think we're kind of suggesting what gets us both excited about the natives are it's less about sharing geography or climate, and it's more about celebrating things that we just have a lot to learn about. What have we not seen before?
Yeah.
We love pines and maples and junipers and beech and the regulars, but boy, is it fun when you walk into a show and say, "Ooh, what's that?
Is that a cottonwood? What's that over there?"
Yeah, that rose that won a Kokofu prize, I think, or that pyracantha that had been defoliated in Kokofu.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's the stuff we sit around and talk about.
Yeah, and having a few more of those that kind of break our tradition would be nice.
And then that brings up the discussions that we'd love to have about kind of styling. So I can mention a lot of people have the idea that when professionals get together, or when even bonsai friends get together, they're often talking about styling. And it's kind of hilarious because I'd say a good 90-95% of the time, tree health, period.
Yep.
We're talking about watering, health, spraying, pests, disease, lab tests, like repotting timings, technical health stuff. And I remember one of the funniest examples of that was I was visiting Aichien in Japan when Juan Andrade was apprenticing there. And he and I had known each other from years before, and we just instantaneously got into the craziest rapid fire discussion. And I was just giving him a hard time. I'm like, why are all those pines dropping branches? He's like, oh my God, we had to repot those late. And the choice was either not repot them at all or just go for it. And we knew we'd lose branches, and we're doing that, and it'll take longer. What about this? What about that? And I think 4 hours later, someone was teasing us because we'd barely come up for air. But there's just a lot to cover. When it's a friend you haven't seen in a while and you're growing different species or have different stages of development, you want to pick their brains.
Right. And we do a lot of that when we get together. But
it's true. And we're in adjacent states, theoretically.
Yeah.
If you don't count staying at Jefferson, I don't know where that fits in. But
Somewhere up there.
But I want to have that discussion about redwoods, and that's what reminded me is redwoods are possibly my single favorite example of a species for which we can make a compelling bonsai that looks like a mini redwood, or we can make a bonsai-shaped redwood.
Yep. You can make one that's squat and small and looks like a Hershey Kiss, or you can make one that's tall and has the grandeur and feeling of a redwood you'd see in Humboldt.
And even those
forest.
taller ones still have impossibly wide flare or taper,
Yeah.
much like we'd expect in a bald cypress or something.
Yeah.
And so it's not 20% of redwoods that are tall, slender trees. They're mostly bonsai shaped because we have so much more flexibility.
Right.
And so what does it mean to celebrate a native if we're disguising it as a bonsai? I don't even know that I thought much about that.
It kicks the steam out of the argument.
It's kind of funny. I only grow natives. I just make sure they look like bonsai.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, a deadwood-focused redwood design, a deadwood-focused oak design, a stump-focused oak design, very popular.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I love seeing all these things. Again, we're all about contrast and doing all and seeing fun, unique approaches to these, design challenges we have. And so I don't really come down really hard on one or the other. And I always ask the question, what's my starting point?
Yep.
If you hand me a stump of a redwood, it's going to be a juniper style redwood.
Yeah.
If you hand me that unicorn, tall, slender trunk with graceful or non-existent taper, we're going tall and skinny with that guy.
Yeah.
I wish we had more of those. We might need to actually cultivate tall, slender redwoods.
That would be actually kind of interesting.
I'm dying to see a tall, skinny redwood grove smaller than Ryan's amazing, 12-foot wide composition.
Well, I mean, I think about, I was just driving through Eastern Oregon last week. I think about ponderosa pine a lot because I drove through thousands of those. When was the last time you saw a ponderosa pine bonsai that was ramrod straight? It's interesting with the native plant argument because we're celebrating these freaks of nature, the Yamadori, right? And you could almost argue they're not natural. I mean, they're natural. We find them in nature. But do 99.99999% of ponderosa pines look like the ones that we celebrate in bonsai?
Which gets us back to the question, what are you choosing for your models?
Right.
What are your starting points? People mostly know now that black pines are tall, skinny, angular, straight, boring trunked seashore trees.
Yeah.
And then the wise ass will say, well, you do know those beautiful bonsai, those are all collected trees, right? Yeah, I do know that. Yeah. And I just find it really interesting that what are our starting points and what is our artistic goal? Because kind of what we're seeing is our artistic goal is this unicorn. And that's cool, but walk into it eyes wide open. We're not choosing the decrepit old large trunked pines. We're finding the ones that happen to have these anomalies, these narrow things. Now, junipers are a little better example because a much higher percentage are going to demonstrate crumholtz, that ability to form the literal crooked wood in that case, where we get the twisty, sinuous forms, whereas the tree right next to it might be ramrod straight. Our Sierra junipers mostly grow straight as an arrow. Yeah. But the tree next to it, up at very high elevation, is going to be a nice twisty mess.
Yeah, but that's not the same for pines or spruce or a lot of those.
No, not as much. And yet we take the same license with how we style them.
Yeah.
Did we talk ourselves out of every artistic precept we theoretically subscribe to?
I don't know, but we should come back to the point that if you like it, do it, because that's what bonsai is about. If you like something that looks unnatural, if you like foliage that's 100% authentic to how it was pulled out of the mountain, if you like, trees that don't look like trees that are more idealized and
artistic,
then do what you like, because bonsai is about having fun and creating something beautiful. And there's a lot of different definitions of what something beautiful can be.
How do you answer the question when a student says, what should I do with this tree?
It's a tough one. But there's a lot of paths to success to make a nice tree. I think a big thing that we don't talk about enough is momentum. And so what's built into that plant that might be pushing it in one direction or another? If it's hard or challenging to take a very exaggerated taper black pine and then try and make that look natural.
That's a really good word for that. I teach the exact same thing, but I've never used the word momentum to describe it.
Yeah, it's a word I come back to a lot when I'm teaching, because it's really showing, where is this tree? Where has the aesthetic been in the past? And
it exists in time, and we're on a journey, and we're, as bonsai craftspeople, we're course correcting going forward.
Exactly.
We're not undoing the past, not all the way to square one, but we are course correcting.
So if you have a ponderosa pine with a ramrod straight trunk, cool. Let's make
Rock
that
it.
look like a real tree. if you have a crazy, awesome
Deadwood forward.
Yeah, Yamadori from Randy Knight, then that's cool. Let's like make something abstract and interesting out of that.
And if we can then tell a story on top of that, even better.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways in bonsai to make beautiful trees. I mean, something I'm excited about for the upcoming Pacific Expo that we're having here in Oakland is that the judging process takes away our biases, and we get to focus on, the intent. If this tree's been focused on a more artistic, idealized bonsai, then you judge it for that. If this tree's in a more natural direction, then you judge it for that. And you change your judging parameters based on what's in front of you.
That's right. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in upcoming episodes. But I think if we got to hear from where we started, I think we've pretty much covered what we were thinking on these.
Yeah. So you're going to graft your junipers?
Oh, man. A couple of the junipers I'm going to graft. I'm pretty stubborn, so I'm going to go for some native ones too. And so I'm that stubborn guy that's going to want to try a couple different approaches. I want my starting points to be as well informed as possible, but I still want to give at least a couple trees the old college try.
Yeah. And the thing that I think we hammered most in this conversation is, if you keep it native, it's going to make a beautiful tree. If you graft it, it's going to make a beautiful tree. They might look different, and that might have a different feeling, but they're both going to be nice if you put the effort in.
And we personally want to see what you have to do with your trees, because when we go to shows, we know what our trees are going to look like. We want to see what your trees look like. Yep. And there's a lot more perspectives than there are people doing bonsai. So I'd love to see all these different ideas coming out.
Yeah, but maybe native isn't always what it turns out to be.
Yeah, or there's more to native than we give it credit for.
Exactly.
Often.
Exactly.
The discussion neither starts nor ends with its native status.
Yeah.
Its passport. Yeah.
Yeah. We just need more nice bonsai, and whether you're going to do that with a valley oak or a Japanese maple, more power to you. I want to see both of them. I
kind of wish we could teleport to your garden right now and look at your oaks we've been talking about.
Yeah, your podcast with JT.
Yes.
Was fantastic. I enjoyed that
awesome.
conversation. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement that I'm glad there's so much energy behind people playing with what's in our backyards or what's in the backyard of 1,000 miles away.
Yep, and looking forward to seeing more.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you for. I still have to decide about that juniper, but thank you.
Yeah.
The music on today's podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Blue Dot Sessions. Check them out at www.sessions.blue.